Hi everyone, William Brawley here with Imaging Resource, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the new OM System OM1 from OM Digital Solutions. OM System, OM Digital Solutions, who are they? Well, for those unfamiliar, the brand name on the front of the camera might give it away. The OM1 is the first camera since this new company was started, but it's essentially the successor to the Olympus EM1 Mark III, although it does include some of the cool features that were exclusive to the EM1X. In this 10-minute review video, I'm going to discuss the main features and specs of this new camera, as well as dive into some of the details that we found from our hands-on review and lab testing. So, let's dive on in. As you can see, the new OM1 looks quite similar to the earlier EM1 Mark III, or the EM1 Mark II in the case of the camera that I have right here. But there have been some major updates and improvements to the OM1, not only on the outside, but under the hood as well. We'll get to the exterior design updates later, but the big star of the show is the OM1's new sensor. OM Digital Solutions have finally put in a new sensor in their high-end Micro Four Thirds camera. Back in 2016, Olympus debuted a high-resolution 20-megapixel sensor with the EM1 Mark II. Even the EM1 Mark III 4 years later was still using the same 20-megapixel sensor. And while the image quality was and still is quite good from these earlier cameras, the sensor was starting to look long in the tooth, and we're happy to see a new chip inside this flagship camera. Inside the OM1, it has an all-new stacked sensor, the first of its kind with a Micro Four Thirds camera. It still has the same resolution as the earlier cameras at just 20 megapixels, which might be disappointing to some, but in our opinion 20 megapixels is a good amount of resolution for this type of sensor, offering a balance of excellent detail and high ISO performance. On that note about high ISO performance, that's one key area of improvement with this new stacked backside illuminated sensor compared to the EM1 III and EM1X. Now, high ISO performance was one of the main areas we wanted to see improved in a successor to the EM1 III, and we're very pleased to see that this is the case with the OM1. The overall ISO range is much broader too than the earlier models, going up to ISO 102-400 compared to just 25,600. High ISO image quality is impressive for this class of camera and sensor size, and we do see better higher ISO performance compared to these prior models. There's better detail and less noise. Even with images up to like ISO 25,600 are surprisingly good from the OM1. It's still a little noisy, but the images are certainly much more usable here. Now, in addition to high ISO performance, one of the main benefits to this new stacked sensor is speed and performance. Thanks to the stacked sensor, the OM1 can dump raw data out of the sensor for processing much more quickly. One result is the ability to shoot at up to 50 frames per second with continuous autofocus. Now, this is using the electronic shutter, not mechanical shutter, but thanks to the stacked design and the fast readout speed, there's very minimal rolling shutter artifacts. Now, the ability for the OM1 to shoot at 50 frames per second puts it faster than some higher-end cameras, such as the Sony A1 and Canon R3, which are both way more expensive than the OM1. And going even further, if you don't need continuous autofocus, the camera can shoot at even faster 120 frames per second at full resolution, which is just astounding. The new stacked sensor plus a new image processor that's 3 times faster than the previous generation gives the OM1 amazing overall performance with excellent burst shooting capabilities. And we haven't even talked about the autofocus system, which also gets a major upgrade compared to the previous models. Now when it comes to autofocus, the OM1 has over 1,000 face detection pixels spread over the entire sensor area. And all these AF points are cross-type too, which improves autofocusing precision no matter how you orient the camera. The old EM1X and EM1 Mark III, for example, had all cross-type autofocus points, but they only had 121 AF points. So the new OM1 system is a huge upgrade in that regard. And in the field, the AF system proved to be very impressive even while shooting at 50 frames per second. Focus tracking remained steady and precise and reliable in most cases. Beyond just more AF points, the OM1 also gains the cool AI-based Intelligent Subject Detection system that was previously only available in the EM1X, but it's even better now. The AI detection AF on the EM1X previously worked for just birds, trains, cars, motorcycles, and aircraft, but the OM1 now adds dogs and cats into the mix as well. In our testing, this Intelligent Subject Detection system worked very well, easily finding and locking onto the intended target. It was already great in the EM1X too, but we're really pleased to see this cool technology make its way into the smaller, lighter OM1 camera, thanks in large part to the improved computational horsepower of the new image processor. Much like previous Olympus OMD cameras, the OM1 also features powerful in-body image stabilization. The IS technology from Olympus has been some of, if not the best we've seen in the industry, and somehow they've managed to make it even more powerful in this latest camera, offering up to 8 stops of stabilization correction depending on the lens used. Now, not only does the IS system make things much easier when shooting in low light conditions, it also just helps with handheld shooting in general, especially with long telephoto lenses. Not only does the IS system make things much easier to shoot in low light and just handheld shooting in general, especially with telephoto lenses, but the powerful IBIS system lets the camera do some really cool computational photography tricks as well. Like the EM1 Mark III, the OM1 has a high-res shooting mode offering an 80 megapixel composite shot when using a tripod. Thanks to the more powerful IBIS system in this camera, you can shoot high-res shot handheld as well. The handheld high-res shooting mode lets you capture composite image at up to 50 megapixels. For landscape photographers on the go or anyone looking for high-resolution images without the need for a tripod, this handheld high-res shooting mode is an excellent feature and works really well. Now, in addition to handheld high-res shooting, you can also shoot with live composite handheld as well, rather than just on a tripod. As with the EM1 III, live ND shooting is also available in the OM1, although it's even better now with the new ND64 option, or a shutter speed reduction of 6 stops. This live ND feature is really clever and works really well and is handy for long exposure shots without the need for physical neutral density filters. While the OM1 is arguably a more photocentric camera, the OM1 has a lot of high-end video capabilities as well. The camera can shoot 4K video both in Ultra HD and Cinema 4K resolutions, but it now goes up to 60 frames per second, whereas the EM1 Mark III, for example, only went up to 30p. You can record 8-bit and 10-bit video internally, or you can get a higher quality 12-bit RAW signal out through the HDMI to an external recorder. There's also log video features, hybrid log gamma or HDR video, improved image stabilization when shooting in 4K, and improved high-speed video recording with Full HD video now up to 240 frames per second. Now, before we wrap up, let's talk about the design and build quality of the camera. Overall, the OM1 doesn't look that much different to the EM1 Mark III. The cameras share a similar shape and design, but the OM1 just feels better in the hand thanks to improved ergonomics. The grip has better contouring and the shutter release sits almost flush with the top of the camera. It feels really nice and comfortable in the hand. The controls and buttons are essentially identical to the EM1 Mark III, although some have been redesigned or changed slightly, but they are all basically in the same locations around the camera body. The two primary differences are probably the front and rear control dials, which are now placed within the camera body rather than sat on top. They're a little more difficult to rotate than before, but I think that's a good thing as they're less likely to be bumped accidentally. And it's also probably better for durability as well, since they're less exposed. Now, another major improvement to the OM1 is the electronic viewfinder. The one on the EM1 Mark III was starting to look dated, so we're really happy to see a higher resolution EVF in this new camera. The new EVF in the OM1 ups the resolution from 2.36 million dots to 5.76 million dots. It's a much higher resolution screen and it looks excellent in the field. In addition to the higher resolution, it's also a faster refresh rate at up to 120 frames per second. The rear display gets an improvement as well. It's still a 3-inch display just like the EM1 Mark III, but it's a higher resolution panel. The rear display is plenty sharp and bright and works great in sunny conditions. We still have dual card slots inside the OM1, but now they both use the faster UHS 2 standard instead of just one, which is a great feature. Lastly, I want to touch on the durability of the camera. Olympus OMD cameras were already renowned for their durability and weather sealing. Much like IBIS, these cameras have some of the best weather sealing we've ever seen. And the OM1 somehow goes even further, with an IP53 rated weather sealing construction. This is a higher weather sealing rating than the IPX1 rating on the EM1 Mark III. Now, the camera is still not fully waterproof, but the camera is even better constructed than before, and it's better sealed up against dust and moisture. Essentially, the OM1 is designed to withstand whatever you can throw at it, within reason. To summarize, the OM System OM1 is an all-around impressive camera. Longtime Olympus fans will feel right at home with this camera, and will also undoubtedly appreciate the multitude of updates and upgrades, several of which feel like a long time coming. As we said in our written review, the OM1 is more impressive than any previous Olympus camera in just about every way. If you'd like to check out our full in-depth review of the OM1, please check the link in the description below. We have our detailed hands-on review, lab sample images, real-world shots, and more. If you like this kind of video, we'd love to hear your feedback in the comments down below. What other cameras would you like us to review in video form? Or what other kind of videos would you like us to make? We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you all in the next video.